I learned that the key to accelerating your know, like, and trust with other people is show up to be there as a trusted advisor. I learned networking is like opening a bank account. You need to make deposits before you can make withdrawals. And one of the biggest mistakes that I see many people make when they network is they're too focused only on transactions rather than developing a team of people around them. And I love the acronym team together, everybody achieves mastery.
Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of More Clients, Less Effort. My guest today is descended from a lineage of successful entrepreneurs and self-made millionaires. Robert Butwin's journey is a testament to breaking the mould. Early, he decided to step away from the conventional country club smart business practices ingrained in his upbringing, instead choosing a path of network marketing for personal fulfillment and financial stability. Robert is the author of the best-selling book, Street Smart Networking, produced a number of CDs, and his writings have been featured in professional trade journals across the globe. Robert's also a sought-after host for various webinars and so on. Robert is a strategist for entrepreneurs, adept at transforming visions into realities and uncovering hidden opportunities. Please welcome my guest today, Robert Butwin.
I'm really grateful to be here and to be able to share some insights, perspectives, and be able to serve your audience.
Mate, one thing, we've known each other for a little bit now through networking. And one thing that has always struck me about you is your, as you said, your willingness to serve others. Tell me more about that, and where do you think that desire to see other people succeed comes from for you?
Well, as a networker, and early in my career, and a longtime friend of our family was Harvey McKay. And Harvey wrote a couple key books. One of them is How to Swim with the Sharks, and the other one was Dig Your Well Before You're Thirsty. And when I originally met him, he told me, and it's an old saying that many of you probably heard, your net worth is in direct relationship to the value of your network. And back in 1983, 84, I watched him, I graduated from the University of Minnesota. And the University of Minnesota had a really, excuse my language for your audience, shitty football team. I mean, they won one game and lost all the rest, and they were out by their opponents 3-1. So through his networking, he was able to bring Lou Holtz, which was a premier coach, in to coach the Minnesota Gophers. And he turned the program around. And so I saw the value of networking. And my mindset was, once you understand the value of it, then it's like, okay, how do I continually become that elite or pristine networker? So as it relates to the question you asked, I learned that the key to accelerating your know, like, and trust with other people is show up to be there as a trusted advisor. I learned networking is like opening a bank account. You need to make deposits before you can make withdrawals. And one of the biggest mistakes that I see many people make when they network is they're too focused only on transactions rather than developing a team of people around them. And I love the acronym team together, everybody achieves mastery. So early on, I realized the value of being a quality networker, and the only way it was going to really happen is showing up to be of service first.
Do you think that networking works for every business?
The answer is definitely, especially today. Because, now, it's like 60 some years ago, my cousin wrote a song, and I'll get to your question. And in the lyrics of the song were the words, "You better start swimming or you'll sink like a stone. Times are a-changing, my friend." You take a look at from when I started business and all the changes that have happened, especially with AI. Now, one of my partners that I met through networking, his name is James Feldman, and he's written 20 plus books. He's a CSP certified speaking professional, has helped some very large companies increase sales over $3 billion US. And ultimately, when you're asking, does it work for any business, with the onset of AI, artificial intelligence, and we look at AI as your accelerated innovation for your business differentiation. So you can't be a master of everything. So it goes back to what I mentioned before. You want to create a team of people around you. You want to stay in your state of genius. What are you really good at, and find other people around you. It's like when it comes to technology. I'm probably at the lower end of that spectrum. But in the meantime, I've got people in my team that I've met through networking. I met James through networking, and we mastermind all the time. We talk to each other like every day. So I believe that ultimately by surrounding yourself with the right team of people. In fact, let me tell you Harvey's story. When he was 80 years old, he chose for his 80th birthday to invite 300 of his closest friends. I don't know how much money he spent, but he spent a lot of money. He flew them in and everything else. He did the same thing when he hit 90, because it was his way of paying back to the people that helped him become who he is. So I don't care what business you're in. When I started, it was like 6 degrees of separation. Today it's probably 1 degree of separation.
Yeah, it's not much, is it?
No.
It's not much anymore. One of the things that it's always interested me was, and I've been networking 20 plus years now as well as one of my key strategies in my business, is that I see a lot of people sort of come in and they kind of look for what they can get from a relationship first, not what they can give to a relationship. And one thing I certainly noticed, certainly when I first joined BNI, BNI have this philosophy as give as gain. If you serve first, then you will be served in return. But it was as a concept I didn't really wrap my head around, when I first got into it, right? But it was only when this is kind of real epiphany that I worked out when I started to give selflessly, started to create opportunities, say, and as you almost embedded into your, opening vernacular of every conversation you have is how can I serve you? How can I help you? That I actually started to see something in return. Why is it that what is the trigger for people to make that transition? Because I've noticed when I ask that question on LinkedIn, people kind of come at it from a position of suspicion to think, what do you mean? How can I help you? Right? Meaning, I'm going to sell you some services, not like I can introduce you to someone in my network. What do you think that is?
Well, sometimes based on what you're doing, a small change will make a significant impact in the results you're giving. First of all, nobody wants to be helped. So rather than help, I say the value that I can be for you, and I'd like to talk about how we could possibly collaborate. Those are the couple other key words, because, today, most people are either looking for visibility, credibility, or connectivity. It's like when March of 2020, when the world changed, so to speak, COVID happened, and all of a sudden everybody found themselves isolated one way or the other. One of the first things I did is I created a list of resources. So if I'm on a call with you and we're talking about something, and there's certain kinds of common resources, especially we're in the digital world, I can copy and paste it and put it in the chat. One of the things I created is what I call my vault. And in the vault, I created I started to put together a list of over 60 different networking events that happen on Zoom. So that way, whenever I'm having a conversation, and part of what that strategy was about was, it's like if you want to speak on platforms, part of, what is expected of you is you're supposed to bring some people to listen to you speak, because why do you want to speak on somebody else's platform? You want to tap into their network, but the person that's got the platform also wants to tap into your network. It's a reciprocity. One of the books that part of what changed my life, and one of the books, and I'll get to this in a second, was listening to a cassette tape series, for those of you that are old enough to remember what a cassette tape is, by Wayne Dyer, called How to Be a No Limit Person. But the key one was Robert Cialdini, with the Book of Influence and the Book of Pre-Persuasion. He talks about the 6 key things that will help you become more effective as an influencer, because the reality is you want to be able to influence people. And so to me, part of my strategy, and it's a real simple strategy, it started when I met Jim Feldman again, and then the 3D thinking. But part of my strategy is, I'd like to find out more about what you do, what you're doing to expand your business, and how I can be of value to you. So I'm starting off by giving one way or the other. And the more that you're able to ask the right questions, you get into the other person's world, you understand what's going on, and you show up to be of service or value. And there's many different ways to be able to do that. You're accelerating that know, like, and trust.
Yeah. I think the key one for me in that is like. People want to surround themselves with people they like. And so when you can be of service, and when you can be of value to people, and when you can sort of lift them up and see them succeed selflessly, they'll often sort of, take you along with them. And that's a key one for me. And how do you create a like? How do you be in a relationship where people actually like you and what it is that you do. I'm curious from your perspective, Robert. You've been in business for a very long time now, and as we mentioned in your intro, grew up in a family of entrepreneurs. How was it different, and what sort of pushback did you get from, say, family members who had done things maybe in an old school way from a marketing context, and how did you deal with that?
Well, as I was coming up through the ranks, our family started what was known as the high school war cheerleading jacket business. If you're into sports, you letter, and as you're going through whatever process, you get one of these letter jackets. And so what happened is I was having conversations. I was the older generation, and I was always looking at, I saw things my own way. I was trying to explain it to my dad, and you're talking about pushback. And part of that pushback, and what he would say is, it worked in the past, it's going to work now. So
we've always done it, so therefore.
Yeah, exactly. And I could go into a story because when I started, one of the jackets in our line was a surcoat. If you don't remember what a surcoat is, it goes 3/4 of the way down. I played sports, and not at a high level, but softball teams and things like this. And that wasn't really the kind of thing that looked good on that. And so I helped design. I took the letter jacket and made it out of we created the original style was what we call bat wing. Then we went to the raglan sleeves. Many of our competitors had a set-in sleeve, but I know that you wanted to bring the fashion in that because when you got done playing softball, usually you would end up at the bar, because if people were going to sponsor you, quite often in the U.S., the pubs or whatever would sponsor you. So I knew that things had to change. I knew that, we were in a changing world, and for whatever reason, however, I saw that before I got into personal growth, it's just part of my DNA. And I recognized that, to advance, you got to make some changes. And, part of it was because my grandmother controlled the family, even though she wasn't there. And so, it's just what I recognized, however I came across it, it's part of how I saw the future. And you got to change, because nothing, it's an expression, if nothing changes, nothing changes. Yep. 5 simple, profound words. And so, I'm looking for the future and how I can make things better.
Yeah, look, I completely agree. I want to throw this out to you because I think the fundamentals of marketing and growth haven't really changed that much, right? We certainly have, I guess, changed the technology that we used, as you mentioned AI, and that will increasingly sort of play into, how we market our business in the next 20, 50, 100 years. Yeah. Social media and technology has changed how we've done things over the past 20. But I want to throw this statement at you and get your take on it, that ultimately marketing and growth comes down to the number of conversations we can have. And if we can talk to more people, our business will inevitably grow. Get your perspective on that.
I think obviously it's talking to people. Obviously you want more of a systematic way of talking to those people. Part of, you're talking about marketing. And one of the things that I did back in the days, it was back probably 91, 92, is we ended up sending out, or were instrumental in sending out 65 million cassette tapes. It started with, the Ray Casano tape. We put a different headline on it because obviously in marketing, you want to grab somebody's attention. You want them to be able to either listen to or read whatever marketing, methodologies that you're doing. I mean, the debate when I started is that a long story would always outsell a short story depending upon the cost. But in the meantime, you got to grab their attention. You got to have a story or something that's compelling and a call to action. But it gets down to talking to people. You want to connect human to human. It goes back to what Jim, a lot of what I see, I learned from Jim Rohn. He said, if people believe the promise, they'll pay the price based on whatever you're trying to influence them as it relates one way or the other. But, it's still finding those right few people. One person can change your life. And I can give you a different example, but it was still marketing. And it was when I originally met my wife. I mean, before I met her, I probably had, and I don't know the exact number, I dated probably 100 different ladies before I met her. I mean, I didn't meet her until I was 30 years old, but I knew that she was the right person. Same thing in networking. One person that I met, a guy named Charles and Don, actually 2 different people, but before I met them, I had conversations with a lot of people. But part of it is having faith and focus. Having faith, if you consistently do the right things, you refine what you're doing, and focused on where you want to end up, that yes, you need, to find that one or two or three right people, you need to talk to a lot of people. There's a number, something like, and I think I was talking to a guy at the time from United, that something like, I want to say 65% of their revenue came from 1 or 2% of their clientele. So,
well, that's often the case in business. 80% of your revenue comes from 20% of your clients, and when 4% comes from 54% comes from 4% of your clients. We need to kind of look at that and obviously get that balance. When did you, in the family business, see a significant shift in results as a result of putting a really coherent networking strategy in place? And when we talk team, we're not talking necessarily the team that you employ. We're talking all the people who have influence and strategic partnerships, in effect, aren't we? When did you see a real change in the family business as a result of executing your vision in how you were connecting with people?
Well, as far as the family business, I made the decision to leave the family business in 1984. I actually left the family business in 1990. It wasn't, when I originally started off, I sort of like dove in. I was ignorance on fire. I didn't know what I didn't know. But I just, for my mindset, because part of my background, and I've gone beyond it, but it's still part of me, is network marketing, MLM. But I dove in and I ended up creating more debt than I want to acknowledge at the time. But, and again, you've got to put everything in its proper perspective. And the only reason I know the debt is because it was right about the same time that I met the lady that I have been married to for 38 years. I've known her for 40 years. And she started to like me and she wanted to know where I was financially. So she said, let me take over your book.
I need to check all your credentials.
She wanted to see where I was financially. And it wasn't a pretty picture. And it was like I had 41 debts, $102,000 back in the mid 80s.
I remember a reasonable sum of money back then, right?
Yeah, that was a great sum of money back then. But in my mind, I sat back and I reframed it. I said, if I were going to open a McDonald's or whatever franchise, how much it was going to cost me. I realized based on where I came from, I was in, so to speak, I came up from an environment, and that I would be more effective because now I found myself financially challenged. So I would be able to be more empathetic one way or the other. And, it actually served me. I don't think people need to get into debt to be successful. But yeah, that was just part of my journey. And I was always focused, knowing where I was going to end up. In fact, when I originally met, her name's Bonnie. When I originally met Bonnie, we were walking across from where she lived one day. And I turned to her and I said, there's nothing or nobody that's going to stop me from succeeding. It's that unwavering commitment to yourself, that goes through every, cell in your being. But, and she realized that probably meant her, which it didn't. But, that was just my commitment to being successful. I didn't know how. I knew why I wanted to be successful. And I knew that if I continually went down this path, that I would figure it out. And I started to listen to a lot of cassette tape series. And then ultimately I ended up finding a real live mentor that anytime I had a question, I could call. And we just start, even though we'd been friends over a period of time, we just got back, we started to work together again. But I think mentorship is a very important aspect. And that's part of why you're doing what you're doing, so that you can bring people that have really made it and done it ethically, that you can extract their wisdom in a way to serve your audience.
Yeah, for me, podcasting is one of those things, right? We can take these stories and this wisdom and share it with people so that they can have greater success in their life as well. Talk to me about the SOAR Academy. SOAR Academy is one of your new things. Firstly, explain what the SOAR Academy is to our listeners, and let's drill into how you're creating leverage in your marketing through the SOAR Academy.
Well, part of where SOAR Academy came from, and again, it's if you're consistently doing, out there in action, you're going to meet the right people. And I met Jim Feldman. I've alluded to him a couple different times. Originally, he told me what one of his signature speeches. It's the boxcar story, and I'll real quickly, because I think it's sort of the foundation of how. And when I originally met him, I knew this guy was brilliant based on all his accomplishments. He was going through law school, and at the time they're doing these focus groups, and one of the guys that was supposed to attend the focus group calls him up and says, "I can't attend the focus group this weekend." And Jim asked, "Why not?" And a lot of your success is based on asking the right questions. The guy says, "Well, I work for an insurance company and I've got to go out and adjust a boxcar." And Jim said, "What do you mean adjust a boxcar?" Well, back then they transported goods on the railroad and they're called boxcar. So Jim asked him, "Can I go with him?" They go out, spend all day before they had technology, find the boxcar, open up the boxcar, there's 33,000 gallons of pasta sauce. So Jim said, what are you going to do now? He says, well, we've already paid the claim. I've got to figure out how to monetize it. Jim asked him, how much? Guy said $5,000. Jim bought it. He didn't have the money. He just knew he could make a profit. He had to make $60,000 in that transactions. Went on to make 14 more boxcars, made $500,000 back in the early 70s. So this is a guy that I knew that I wanted to be involved with. And so I developed a relationship over a fairly quick time. And so based on the relationship I had with him and the relationship I have with Tom Gay, I don't know if you've met Tom or not. He's engagepro.com. He used to have refer.com, and he's got ChatBridge, which is a way when you're in Zoom calls to be able to extract the information, put them to your CRM. So the three of us had started doing business together, and Jim as a CSP and what the SOAR Academy is, and SOAR is an acronym for strategies, opportunities, action, and result. Part of what we continually would come across with people that have been oversold and underdelivered, and we wanted to be able to have a triad, so to speak, that would help more people create the success that they were looking for. And so, we started 2-3 months ago. The results, Jim and Tom and I are all very service oriented. We want to make sure that we underpromise and overdeliver. It's not very much, the price. When we originally started, the price was very inexpensive. I mean, very inexpensive, because we wanted testimonials. Now as we're starting to get more results, but again, the whole concept is still the same. We want to make sure that we can deliver whatever we say we're going to deliver.
Yeah, absolutely. How do you bring people through the SOAR Academy? What marketing tactics are you using to get people in and retain them?
The initial marketing tactics were, and because I look at networking like dating, it's like, why go on a date if you want a second date? So whenever I would meet people, as far as when I'm networking, and I can go into some of the biggest mistakes that I see people make when they're networking, but I would have them set a one-on-one, because that's really where you're getting to get to know somebody. So, it started off in that's sort of like, from networking, your first date is the one-on-one. The second date, I would guide them to our Better Change podcast. And so that was a grassroots form of marketing where the initial people came from. Now, as we're ramping up, one of the other people that I met through networking was a very savvy entrepreneur. She's got access to over 30 million names. We're creating different funnels, and we're developing a strategy through using technology of how to meet people, not spamming them, but, based on dripping on them with quality content is what we're doing now. And so that's where it's going. I mean, we're still in the formation process of this as far as where it is today compared to where it will be. Going back to the movie, build it and they will come. It's like you've got to have faith that no matter what it is that you're doing, that if you consistently do it, and obviously sometimes you need to refine, my partner's website is shifthappens.com. You got to have flexibility. You've got to be able to see where you want to go, but have flexibility with intention to make sure you're going to arrive where you want to arrive.
Yeah, look, I completely agree. We're talking about Field of Dreams, the Kevin Costner film there. So they built it there. I think the thing for me, I was at a networking event last night, right? And we get lots of these little, these things. So we're watching YouTube right now. I'm holding up a bunch of business cards that I sort of collected from last night from conversations. I think we need to think about and ask ourselves in marketing in general is the question, and then what? So someone's handed me a business card, and then what, right? So this is an opportunity to now have a one-to-one, as you say, to have that first date, to see whether they want to have a second date. If someone's handed me their business card, right, because we've had a brief exchange at a networking event, that's effectively the first date to find out if we want the second date. Now we're going to have a date to find out if we want to have a third date and see if we can be of value to each other, see that we can serve each other in some way. And we need to be a little bit open-minded, I think, and I know this is something that you agree with, Robert, about where the relationship could go. It doesn't have to always be a client-supplier relationship. It could be a strategic partner relationship. It could be, I know someone I can introduce you relationship, right? It could be, you would be a fantastic podcast guest relationship. We've got to look a little bit outside the box and not always just go, I've met you, I'm going to sell to you right now, because again, if we start those dates with, we should have 16 children and I want them to be named David and Sally and Tom and Amanda and and blah, 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 blah. Right? The chances of getting a second date are pretty slim.
I would agree. And as far as, I don't know about yourself, but quite often I would go to these networking events, I'd end up with these business cards and they end up with a stack. And probably 80 to 90% of them. And I don't think I think that's more common than people want to really look at it. If your intention, as far as what you're really looking for, isn't not at that heightened level, I think quite often those cards end up in a drawer. And that's part of what I was talking about, a vault. Part of it is developing, and I think it's easier today. Yes, we still need to break through the noise in the marketplace, but it's like if I'm having a half an hour conversation, I open up the vault, which is really my list, and I explain to somebody, I've got a Bitly account, somebody else handles it for me. As I let you into the vault, there's a list of 60 different networking events. There's different people that I've interviewed that have got some very valuable information that can help you as it relates to what you're doing. Now, that's my A list. Now, the B list, because I've tried multiple different things. I've done the gift giveaways. Somebody else does the gift giveaways for me also. That's my B list. But the A list is people I've spent a half an hour with. Now, one of the biggest mistakes that I see people make is they abuse their list. We're all busy. I don't have time to sit back and look at somebody's email every single day or even once a week. So I tell people up front, typically you might see an email from me once a month. And it's only based on if there's something of value, because you want to warm that or nurture that connection. You want to take it from a connection to a client, not a customer. A customer is a one-time purchase. A client is somebody that you're going to be involving with. And I mentioned the people in SOAR Academy. Both of those people, I've developed a relationship because I would refer the right people to them. One of the things that you want to be conscious and careful of when you're referring, because nobody wants to end up with egg on their face. So you want to make sure that if you're making a referral, that it's a good match for the other person.
Well, it's your reputation on the line as well as you make that introduction.
Yes, exactly.
And you don't want to be the person who it's like, I can't believe you introduced me to that idiot. Please don't do it ever again.
Yeah. But, we all start going down that road. It's like when I started on LinkedIn, I was ignorance on fire. When I started networking, I was ignorance on fire. I didn't know what I didn't know. I just know I need to do it. So, but if you go with the mindset that you're going to refine and that you're going to refine the process and that you're going to become a master, or so to speak, a master at it, whatever that might mean to yourself, because it's something that you want to perfect the art of being a very good networker. You want the art of being a successful entrepreneur, whatever it is. And I love acronyms, so it's how you attract, retain, and the transformation. Attract, retain, and the transformation that somebody's going to go through because they're having a relationship with you.
Yeah, absolutely. Some absolute nuggets in there, mate. And I think, whether it's a business card that you've received or whether it's a connection you've made on LinkedIn, you've approached the relationship in the same way. This is a first date. I need to earn the right for the second date by serving the people I connect with, all right, and seeing how I can help them in a way that may not necessarily be of monetary value to me, at least initially.
Exactly. It's like, how do I create relationship currency? You never know if it's going to come back, but you've just got to have faith that if you consistently are showing up on value and helping other people, it might not come back directly from the person that you helped, but I believe, and again, it's my belief, that the universe will ultimately reward you.
Yeah. Robert, we always finish the show with a little bit of a quick fire round, and we haven't sort of warned you because we love the sort of spontaneity of this. So I want to throw a bunch of questions at you, see how we go. But firstly, I'd love to know what's one thing about your business that you didn't expect.
What's the one thing about my business I didn't expect? When I started off, I never realized I was going to be as successful as I actually have. And success is all relative. I mean, compared to many other people, I'm not really successful, but, I've done, very well. It's like at this stage, I don't need to work, but I'll never stop working.
Who's been your most important professional mentor, and what did you learn from them?
Most important, man, I hate to say the most important as far as personal friends that were mentors right off the top. But Robert Butwin was my first one. Tom Schreider's another one. Jim Feldman, Tom Gay, now Scott Schilling. Got a lot of people. I learned a guy named Rook. I was in an event with him, and somebody asked him, what's the meaning of life? And in essence, he said, to live a life of meaning. I mean, you learn a tidbit here and there, and you put together, it's like putting together a puzzle. Wherever you gain those insights. It's putting them together and the action that follows. As far as an indirect mentor, when I was on stage with him, was Jim Rohn. Jim was very instrumental. Michael Gerber, and I actually was on stage with him once, and it was like when I originally listened to the E-Myth, and he starts off by saying 4 to 5 businesses are going to fail in the first 5 years. He says, so the 20% that make it 5 years, 4 to 5 a year are going to fail in the next 5 years. I'm listening to my self-talk, and it's not me. Failure was not an option. So, I mean, just him making that simple statement, even just by listening to some of your guests and they're sharing a key piece here and there, hopefully some of your guests will gain something from what I've said that will be instrumental. They'll be able to point back to this conversation and say that was an eye-opening and life-changing insight that I gained from you.
Love it. Well, what's one thing that's changed over the course of your business career that you think is not a change for the better?
Well, it goes back to what you said, sort of like the technology, the methodology. I mean, the concept of how to meet people is never going to change, but where to meet people. It's like, even though I cut my teeth on the in-person, and that was all I did. Now it's like 99% of what I do is on Zoom, because it's much more time effective, and there's just so much more that I can do. And, it's like, if I've got a whole file of things that I can copy and paste and send to you based on whatever we're talking about. So anyhow, that's the one thing.
Built it over time. Do you think it takes a unique skill that you have to be a successful networker?
The answer is yes, and it goes back to what I heard Ivan Meisner say. And I know you know who Ivan Meisner is. And somebody was saying, well, you're an extrovert. And, I was having that conversation with his wife, and his wife says, no, you're not an extrovert, you're an introvert. And the same situation with myself. I'm having the conversation, and my wife would used to say, I handle both sides of the conversation. And what I came to the realization as a networker, because most extroverts like to talk and don't necessarily like to listen. What I am is a situational extrovert, which is what Ivan Meisner said. I realize the importance of developing quality connections. So, you don't have to be an extrovert. If you're an introvert, I think they're some of the most successful networkers. So there is definitely hope for the introverts. And if you're an extrovert, talk less and ask better questions.
There's some pretty solid advice there. Have you ever thought about giving up, and how did you get past that?
It wasn't an option. I knew that once I left the family business, that ultimately, because I was, so to speak, the black sheep, because I wanted to continually have these different changes, because I saw things or understood things differently. So once I left the family business, the door would not reopen, because I wasn't afraid to tell people when they're out of line or whatever the case was. So, giving up has never been an option, even when 2020 and I had to make the adjustments. Sometimes success doesn't happen as fast as you want, but if your DNA is the fact that that you're going to get to wherever you need to get to, you're going to accomplish whatever you're looking to accomplish. So giving up isn't a word in my vocabulary or thought process.
Yeah, I love that.
Shifting or refining what I'm doing is something different, though.
Yeah. Do you have a morning routine? If so, what does it look like?
The first thing that I do, because sleep is very precious to my wife. And so when I wake up, I don't want to be sitting there, be a meditating or whatever. So I go down to the couch and I would meditate, relax, think about the day. And then I open up my phone app and plug into Wordle. Are you familiar with Wordle? I'm an avid Wordle player. And so, I'll do that. And then based on whatever time my first appointment is, I allow appointments as early as 7 a.m. and I stop them at 5:30 p.m. And I work with the calendar.
Nice. What would be your last meal?
What would be my last meal?
On death row, what's your last meal?
Based on everything that I know, I've gotten more and more into vegetarian, more vegetarian meals, gotten much more away from sugar. So, I love broccoli roasted. I mean, there's so many food. I love to eat, I haven't really thought about what is my favorite meal that I really like one way or the other.
Yeah, nice. Right. Lastly, where do you turn when you feel stuck?
I plug into information. The thing that changed my life was listening to quality information. And today it's much, much more easy to access that. I mean, I think about the amount of money I spent, books, cassettes, CDs, one way or the other. That would be one place. But realistically, if you've got a mastermind of people around you, based on people that you respect their opinion, I would call one of the people in my inner circle. It could be James, it could be Tom, it could be my friend Robert Nadiak. I've got a lot of people that are very sharp people around me, and I would tell them what I'm going through and listen to their perspective.
That's awesome. And it's just the reciprocity, isn't it? If you serve others, then you can lean on them when you're stuck as well.
Definitely.
All right, Robert, thanks so much for sharing your expertise and your journey with us today. Guys, I hope you've enjoyed today's show. As always, like, subscribe, connect, and follow us so that we can bring you more awesome advice and insights from super successful entrepreneurs like Robert. If you're interested in connecting with Robert, of course, you can head on over to shifthappens.com, which is Robert's business partner's website while his is up and running. You'll find that link in the show notes. Of course, Robert, I know you've shared your calendar here, so if it's okay with you, we'll share that as well.
Sure.
With Robert at calendly.com/Butwin, Butwin. And if you connect with Robert, as I know this is your saying, mate, you can't help but win.
Yep.
Fantastic, mate. Thanks very much for joining us today, guys. And thanks again for joining us on another episode of More Clients, Less Effort. We'll catch you on another show real soon.